For generations, the Philippine story has been framed to begin in 1521, the moment Spanish vessels appeared and claimed a distant archipelago for a foreign crown. That version presents the islands as disjointed and undeveloped, waiting for outside order to arrive. Yet this narrative was crafted to serve conquest, not truth. Long before European flags were raised, the Philippines already formed a busy, interconnected world of communities that governed themselves, traded widely, and defended their independence. Sailors from these islands crossed open seas to meet merchants from China, India, and Arabia, exchanging local wealth for foreign goods and ideas. Political authority was not imposed from afar but grown within each community through shared customs and mutual obligation. The image of isolated huts and scattered tribes collapses when faced with evidence of skilled shipbuilders, professional warriors, and thriving ports. What Spanish chroniclers encountered was not an empty stage but a living, confident civilization. Understanding that deeper past requires stepping beyond colonial myths and looking closely at how Filipinos organized their lives before outside powers rewrote their story. At the foundation of this pre-colonial world stood the barangay, a social and political unit whose meaning is far richer than its modern use. The word comes from balangay, the sturdy wooden boats that carried Austronesian settlers to the islands thousands of years ago. Those vessels became a metaphor for community itself, where every member had a role and survival depended on cooperation. A barangay usually consisted of a few dozen families who farmed, fished, traded, and defended themselves together. These were not neighborhoods under a single national ruler, but independent polities, each with its own leadership and customs. Some formed alliances for trade or war, while others remained proudly self-governing. This network of small but capable societies created a flexible system that could respond quickly to changing conditions. Far from being disorganized, the decentralized structure allowed people to move, adapt, and thrive in a landscape shaped by rivers, forests, and seas. The barangay was not just a place to live, it was a complete world. Daily life inside a barangay reflected an intimate understanding of the tropical environment. Homes were raised on wooden posts to keep floodwaters and animals at bay, with walls of bamboo and roofs of nipa that allowed heat to escape. Many houses included an open back platform for washing, cooking, and household work, while a removable ladder provided simple nighttime security. Beneath these homes, families kept livestock and prepared rice, the centerpiece of nearly every meal. Their diet drew from land and sea alike, combining grains, root crops, fish, fruit, and occasional meat. Eating by hand was more than custom. It symbolized a direct connection to the food that sustained them. Farming followed methods designed to respect the land, including shifting cultivation that let soil recover. Fishing was equally advanced, with large nets, fish pens, and nighttime techniques guided by moon and tide. This balance between human need and natural rhythm shaped a worldview that valued harmony rather than domination. Binding each barangay together was a leader known as the Datu, a role often misunderstood through European lenses. Unlike hereditary monarchs, a Datu ruled through merit, not divine right. His authority depended on courage, wisdom, and the ability to earn loyalty. In times of peace, he mediated disputes and organized trade in conflict. He led warriors into battle. Yet he did not govern alone. Councils of elders advised him, ensuring that decisions reflected collective interests. In larger settlements or alliances, more powerful leaders held titles, such as Raja or Lakan, but their responsibilities followed the same principle of service to the community. Leadership was earned through action, not simply inherited. A Datu who failed to protect or provide could lose followers, who were free to join another barangay. This fluid system discouraged tyranny and encouraged leaders to prove themselves continually. Authority rested on mutual trust, creating a political culture that balanced respect with accountability. Social life in the barangay was organized into clear but flexible classes. At the top were the noble families, including the Datu, and those closely related to him. Alongside them stood the maharlika and timawa, free warriors and administrators who supported leadership and answered calls to defend the community. These individuals enjoyed privileges in dress and trade, wearing fine fabrics and gold ornaments that signaled their status. Beneath them were the common freemen, the farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen who formed the backbone of the economy. They owned land, raised families, and paid tribute in crops or labor in exchange for protection. Even here, mobility existed, as bravery or skill could raise a person's standing. At the bottom were the alipin, a dependent class often mistaken for slaves. Their position could result from debt, crime, or capture, yet they retained rights, could own property, and often gained freedom through service or repayment, making their status far different from permanent bondage. The distinction within the alipin class further shows how nuanced this society was. Some lived in their own homes and served part-time, while others resided with their masters and worked more closely under their direction. Both groups could marry, trade, and improve their circumstances, which meant that dependency was rarely a life sentence. These relationships were structured by obligations rather than ownership of human beings. Such complexity reveals a social contract designed to maintain stability while allowing individuals to change their fortunes. This arrangement supported communities that were cooperative rather than brutally rigid. It also underscores how misleading it is to apply European categories to Filipino life before colonization. The barangay system blended hierarchy with shared responsibility, creating a social fabric that encouraged both order and opportunity. These communities were not static villages frozen in time. They were dynamic societies that adjusted to internal pressures and external connections, constantly reshaping themselves to meet new challenges. Those external connections were vast, reaching far beyond the islands. For more than a millennium, the Philippines sat at the crossroads of Asian maritime trade, linking China, Southeast Asia, India, and the Arab world. Filipino sailors were not merely passengers in this network. They were skilled navigators who built powerful plank-built ships capable of long ocean voyages. Archaeological finds in places like Butuan have uncovered these vessels, demonstrating their capacity to transport heavy cargo and large crews. From their harbors flowed gold, beeswax, pearls, spices, and rice, commodities prized in distant markets. In return, traders brought porcelain, silk, metal tools, textiles, and perfumes, creating cosmopolitan ports where languages and customs mixed freely. Chinese ceramics from the Tang and later dynasties have been found throughout the archipelago, proof of sustained exchange. This steady movement of goods also carried ideas, technologies, and beliefs, weaving Filipino communities into a broader world long before Europe entered the scene. Several powerful port states rose from this trade, none more prominent than Tondo in the Manila Bay region. Chinese imperial records from the Ming dynasty describe envoys from Luzon arriving at court as early as the 14th century, acknowledging Tondo's rulers as legitimate kings. Control of river mouths and coastal routes made the kingdom a commercial hub where foreign ships anchored and local merchants negotiated. Further south, Butuan in Mindanao matched that influence with extraordinary wealth drawn from gold mining and processing. Chinese sources even note a Butuan ruler sending tribute in the year 1001, confirming its status as an international player. For centuries, this port linked the Philippines to major empires across Asia. These kingdoms were not isolated curiosities. They were respected partners in regional diplomacy and commerce. Their prosperity supported artisans, shipbuilders, and administrators who kept trade flowing smoothly, reinforcing the idea that Filipino society was both upward-looking and economically sophisticated. Trade did more than fill warehouses, it transformed culture. Through these routes, Islam reached the southern Philippines as early as the 13th century, brought by Arab merchants who established lasting communities. By the 14th century, places like Sulu had become firmly Islamic, adding new religious traditions to the archipelago's already rich spiritual landscape. Elsewhere, older beliefs continued to thrive, blending animism, ancestor veneration, and influences from India and Southeast Asia. This exchange of faith and philosophies illustrates how connected Filipino societies were to the wider world. Ideas moved as freely as goods, shaping local customs while preserving indigenous identity. The islands did not simply absorb outside influences, they adapted them, creating unique cultural expressions. In this way, the Philippines became a meeting place of civilizations, where different ways of understanding life coexisted and interacted. Such diversity challenges any claim that pre-colonial Filipinos lacked depth or sophistication, revealing instead a society comfortable with complexity. Spiritual life was deeply woven into everyday experience. Many communities followed an animistic worldview that saw rivers, trees, mountains, and ancestors as alive with spirit. These beings, known by various names such as Anito or Diwata, were believed to influence health, harvests, and fortune. Maintaining balance with them required ritual and respect, practices guided by spiritual leaders called Babaylan. Often women, though sometimes men, these figures were healers, priests, and keepers of sacred knowledge. They interpreted dreams, read omens, and performed ceremonies that linked the physical world to the unseen. Even the Datu relied on their counsel before making major decisions, recognizing their authority over matters beyond warfare and trade. This prominence highlights the elevated status of women in many Filipino societies, where lineage could pass through both parents and property could be owned or inherited by women. Far from being marginalized, women stood at the heart of religious and social life. That respect for women extended into legal and economic realms. They could manage businesses, negotiate marriages, and even dissolve unions that no longer served them. In the absence of a male heir, a woman could rule a barangay, exercising the same authority as any Datu. Such flexibility was rare in much of the world at the time, making pre-colonial Philippine society notably progressive in matters of gender. Alongside this social balance was a strong tradition of learning. Contrary to the idea that literacy arrived with Spain, Filipinos had their own writing systems derived from ancient Indian scripts. One of these, now called Babaylan, was used to record poetry, messages, and legal agreements. Most writing was done on bamboo or leaves, materials that did not survive the centuries, yet surviving inscriptions like the Laguna copperplate from 900 AD prove that writing and law were already firmly established. These records show a people capable of documentation, contracts, and historical memory long before colonization. Art and craftsmanship further reflected this cultural richness. Warriors wore armor made from hardened animal hide and carried finely forged blades that were both functional and beautiful. Music filled communal life through gongs, flutes, and drums, accompanying dances and storytelling that preserved history and identity. Epic tales passed down through generations kept alive the memory of heroes and migrations. Even in death, artistry played a role, as leaders were sometimes buried in ornate jars or coffins lined with gold. One famous burial vessel depicts two figures rowing a boat toward the afterlife, echoing the deep symbolism of the barangay that carried both the living and the dead on their journeys. These practices reveal a society that expressed meaning through sound, image, and ritual. Life was not merely endured but celebrated, with creativity woven into daily existence. Such evidence stands in stark contrast to the notion that pre-colonial Filipinos lacked refinement or imagination. Taken together, the political, economic, and spiritual systems of the Philippines before 1521 formed a vibrant civilization. Independent barangays cooperated and competed, guided by leaders who earned respect rather than demanding obedience. Seafarers linked the islands to distant markets, turning local resources into global commodities. Faith and folklore connected communities to their ancestors and their environment, while women and men shared power in ways that surprised later observers. Literacy, art, and law all flourished, creating a society both stable and adaptable. Yet when European colonizers arrived, they failed to recognize this complexity. Decentralization was mistaken for disorder, animism for ignorance, and cultural difference for savagery. These misinterpretations became tools to justify conquest and control. Over time, the story of what existed before Spain was pushed aside, replaced by a narrative that placed colonizers at the center of progress. What was lost was not just political independence, but the memory of a fully formed world. Despite centuries of suppression, traces of that world remain. Languages still carry words borrowed from Sanskrit, Arabic, and Chinese, echoes of old trade routes. Traditions and rituals preserve fragments of ancient belief. While archaeological discoveries continue to reveal the skill of early shipbuilders, metalworkers, and scribes, each artifact and inscription challenges the colonial story, offering glimpses of a past that refuses to stay buried. Modern Filipinos are increasingly turning to this evidence to better understand who they are and where they come from. Reclaiming this history is not about rejecting outside influences but about restoring balance, acknowledging that the Philippines had its own rich heritage before foreign powers arrived. By piecing together these forgotten chapters, a clearer and more honest picture emerges, one that honors the resilience and ingenuity of earlier generations. The pre-colonial Philippines was not a blank canvas, but a tapestry of cultures woven through centuries of experience. The world that existed before Spain was vibrant, connected, and deeply rooted in its own values. Barangays functioned like crews on a shared voyage, guided by leaders who served rather than dominated. Trade linked Filipino ports to the far corners of Asia, while belief systems and artistic traditions gave meaning to everyday life. Women held influence, writing preserved knowledge, and communities balanced hierarchy with mutual obligation. When colonizers arrived, they encountered a civilization they did not fully understand, and so they attempted to replace it with their own image. Yet history has a way of resurfacing. Through language, artifacts, and renewed scholarship, the story of pre-colonial Philippines is being told again, revealing a legacy of strength, creativity, and independence. This rediscovered past does more than correct old myths. It restores pride in a heritage shaped by generations who navigated seas, built societies, and defined their own destiny long before 1521 ever came.